More than 900 schools cladded in combustible materials have been banned after Grenfell fire. We're going to read into this exclusive from iNews, you guys. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is REGANELITE here with an exclusive from iNews with the headline of more than 900 schools clad in combustible material banned after the Grenfell fire. Head teachers are calling for action over installation similar that is used in the Grenfell Tower, and wants funds to fix potentially unsafe schools. So, obviously, one that we already have one issue, obviously, with schools for those who are not aware, and that is the reinforced autoclad RAAC concrete, which after a certain amount of years and decades becomes the material is no longer as strong as it used to be and becomes quite easy to break. And there are still already quite a few schools getting that. Now, the very fact that there could be combustible materials within schools is incredibly frightening, especially if there's more than 900 schools that are having this. Especially using similar materials that were in the Grenfell fire. Grenfell, that's really extremely worrying to say the least, guys. I generally hope that's not the case, but if that is the case, obviously the teacher here is obviously saying that they want funds to fix it. Asking the Conservative government for money is just you know what their answer is going to be, even if it means putting children's educations and lives at risk. They're going to turn around and say no, because that's what the Conservatives are. But I think it is something that Labour will need to look at ways of tackling it without having to throw money at it as well. If a Labour government does come into play, if not next year, the early next year, we'll have to wait and see. But this is a very worrying thing to say the least, because we don't want to cause disruption to schools, but when they have materials that are deemed extremely dangerous, it does give great deal of cause concerns, especially if you're a parent out there. So, nearly 1,000 school buildings are believed to contain combustible materials similar to those used in Grenfell Tower. They are now banned in new schools according to findings from a shared study exclusively with the Eye. It also concludes that 120 school projects in England have been built using combustible fatal installations since 2018, when the material was banned from high-rise residential buildings due to its part of the Grenfell fire tragedy. Some combustible claddings and insulation materials were banned from new school buildings last year. The government is now facing calls to urgently remove them from the many schools where they remain. So, again, in order to remove them, you require funds to remove them. And what I think the government will do is, rather than give them money, is they'll basically say you have to pick it out of your own pocket. That's what I fear is what's going to happen. So the data shared with IVE's angered heads and teachers, and concerns grow over the safety of the school estate in the wake of the reinforced autoclad aerial concrete (RAAC) crisis and the long-running problems with asbestos. Yeah, so a lot of schools have not been refurbished as well. That's the one thing as well. Obviously, 13 years of austerity, when you have undercutting, underfunding, you get crumbling the structures of certain schools, and that then they're not getting looked after. You have to remember as well, state schools are not getting the kinds of funding that private schools are getting. It's very important to make that distinction as well. In fact, actually, there's been a lot of cases where teachers are asking for handouts from parents to help fund certain things as well, which is they shouldn't have to do that. But when they're not getting as much funding as they want, children's education is being potentially lost here. So Daniel Kebede, the General Secretary of the National Education Union, had said government spending on school buildings is now a third of what it was in 2010, and the little they are spending going on shoddy and dangerous buildings explorations, the weak legislation put in place following the Grenfell tragedy. This has done nothing to safeguard schools. How can it ever be considered acceptable to add cladding to a school building that makes it more combustible? The study by Rockwell estimates that a total of 1,003 education buildings have been eradicated since 2013 using combustible fatal materials similar to those used in the Grenfell Tower in West London, where 72 people were killed in a major blaze in 2017. The figure includes 923 school buildings and 80 university buildings. Head teachers have called for more government funding to fix potentially unsafe schools in the wake of the findings. George Barton, a General Secretary of the Association of School and College Leaders, the ASCL, said, just as with RAAC and asbestos, this is a specialist issue that schools need expert advice and support in managing. There must also be sufficient capital funding available to ensure any schools that are required to put new safety measures in place that are able to do so as soon as possible. He called on the Department of Education to publish the findings of the consultation into fire safety in schools buildings which closed in 2021, to provide reassurances that all schools are being designed, built and refurbished with the ways they are safe and fit for future. The DfE promised to do so by the end of that year, and the findings are now 2 years overdue. Paul Whiteman, General Secretary of the School Unions Union, the NAHT, said, "This data is deeply concerning. We have long argued that all school buildings should be covered by the ban and on combustible cladding, regardless of height, and those who currently have it, it should have been removed." Yeah, it's a given that this needs to be addressed and this needs to be issued. But as we've already established, obviously, the problem is costs here. And we have a government that will not open its purse strings. And we're going to have the same issue with an incoming Labour government, because they've already said they're not going to be opening the purse strings. So how are they going to deal with this? Because education is vital for all children, and we need to ensure that all children are given the best education possible. So how are they going to deal with this? This is going to be a massive problem for the Shadow Education Secretary when it comes round to it. The government has a duty and a moral obligation to be transparent about where flammable cladding has been used and the risk it potentially poses. It should go without saying that pupils, parents and school staff need to know that school buildings are safe places to work and learn. 100%. I don't think anyone here is going to argue with that. Rockwool, which makes non-combustible installations, uses the construction industry's Gleanington database to calculate the number of buildings with cladding, so that we'll also have combustible installations based on this knowledge of market share. The DfE did not dispute the figures when approached for comment, and said it did not routinely publish its own statistics on combustible fatigue materials in schools. A DfE spokesperson also incorrectly told the Eye that combustible cladding in school buildings have been banned since 2018. They also incorrectly told the Eye. That's not good, especially when they don't know then that there's stuff there. The government actually updated its guidance in May 2022 to prohibit the use of all aluminium composed material, that's ACM cladding, which was used in the Grenfell Tower, and high pressure laminate HPL cladding on external school walls. It also said all new and refurbished school buildings must only contain non-combustible insulation rated A1 for fire safety in their external walls, the highest possible rating. It means hundreds of schools are now thought to be stuck in cladding limbo. The government said earlier this year it would fund remediation for work for residential buildings over 11 metres containing combustible fatigue materials. But this did not include schools. Why? Why not schools? Okay, so you're not gonna add schools for that? Why not? So concerns over school cladding. Majority Kling School in West London is among the schools with buildings built using combustible fatigue materials since the Grenfell tragedy. The special needs school for students aged 4 to 16 located in Feltham in the London Borough of Hounslow completed its work on the £30 million building project in 2018. The school now contains 500 square metres of Tresca Medton HPL cladding on its main building fatigue according to its planning documents. The same Tresca Melton HPL cladding was also used on the exterior of the Cube in Bolton, a student accommodation block that was destroyed by a major fire in 2019. A Greater Manchester Fire Service report on the blaze highlighted the significant risks posed by HPL. Simon Lay, a fire safety expert of OFR Consultants, said that while the actual risk of life-form fires in schools ought to be relatively limited, a major blaze could still be destroyed the school estate. Just because HPL comes in pretty colours and makes the school look attractive, that shouldn't be the only criteria we apply for the school system, he told the Eye. It's a problem that we have to think about from a social perspective, whether we might see it more in schools being lost and the impact that it has on education and costs and insurances and these sort of things. Hounslow Council, which is responsible for majority Kling School, told the Eye it was now actively engaging in the school to ensure that the main building is safe, and we will assess all options including remediation. Liv Bath, the Cabinet member for Education at Hounslow Council, said that schools' buildings was erected in compliance with the relevant building regulations and guidance at the time, and the safety of pupils and staff will always be our top priority as a council. She added, last year when the DfE highlighted concerns regarding the build material and ahead of the guidance changing, the council acted swiftly to conduct a number of safety checks and reviews using independent contractors, which there found there was no immediate danger to the school, its staff or pupils. While the council is satisfied there is no high risk of safety due to the range of fire safety measures already in place, including fire alarms, staffing ratios, fire drills, practice and effective escape routes, we are actively taking steps towards improving the external building fabric in an effort to meet the latest improved standards for external building materials. Majority Clinic School was approached for comment. The Joseph Linking Academy in Warsaw, in the West Midlands, also known to contain the same combustible insulation used in the Grenfell Tower. Spokesperson told the Eye that the school, which was completed in 2019, was built in compliance with the government's fire safety building regulations at the time, and it had had smoke detection across the school estate. Joseph Lincoln Academy are aware that two of its recent new building phases of the development containing Kingspan K15 OPTIM-R or the K112 installation within the external walls built up, they said. The Academy has fully operational automatic smoke detection systems in place. In addition, the buildings have compartment lines to limit the spread of fire with stairwells designed to protect and sterilise fire evacuation spaces. But if these materials are combustible and they are flammable in any way or whatever, that should be alarm bells even with these precautions in place. I think that's a very important caveat to make there. So Moriaki Oki, president of the Royal Institute of British Architects, that's the RABA, echoed calls for remediation and said unsafe combustible fabric materials in schools must be dealt with immediately. He told the Eye that teachers and students deserve to work and learn without fearing for their safety. These trouble finds are the latest in a raft of concerns about the dangerous conditions of England's schools and public buildings, concerns which we have repeatedly raised. England's fire safety standards fall short of what we believe to be the best practice. The presence of combustible fatigue insulation in schools is no less concerning than in a high-rise building and must be dealt with immediately. Catherine McKinnell, Labour's shadow schools minister, had told the Eye the potential scale of the combustible cladding on school buildings will frighten parents and staff already reeling from the Conservatives' made RAAC crisis. Let me just make excuse me. This is not just Conservatives. This Labour could have dealt with this too. Yeah, it's not just Conservatives. This RAC thing that was also could have been addressed under the Tony Blair, Gordon Brown government. Very important to make that distinction. It's crucial that we now get answers from ministers about what they know about the scale of the cladding and why they have failed to update the fire safety guidance. The Eye understands that Baroness Barron, the school minister, met with the members of the All Parliamentary Party Parliamentary Group, the APPG, on fire safety and rescue in September to discuss fire safety in schools in the wake of the RAC crisis. It was the first time a minister had attended a meeting of the group to discuss fire safety in schools in 4 years. 4 years! That's unacceptable. Unacceptable, 4 years. That's ridiculous. One member of the APPG speaking to Eye anonymously said the cladding crisis across schools was just the same story as this concrete crisis, but the government have forgotten about it. It was just a real scandal. They say there haven't been any deaths in school fires. Well, do you want me to show you the bodies? Are we going back to that? A DfE spokesperson said that the safety of children and young people is paramount following Grenfell's fire tragedy. We updated our guidance for schools and colleges in line with our wider regulations and removed cladding from school buildings over 18 metres. We continue to work with responsible bodies to ensure that all existing schools and colleges in England comply with the relevant buildings and building and safety regulations. Spokesperson for the National Fire Chief Council, the NFCC, called on the government to bring English law in line with Scotland and Wales and install sprinklers in all new and refurbished school buildings to reduce the risk of fire. That should be a given. Yeah, you got them in there. And as long as they're working, that will really be give much more assurances to people, especially to parents and teachers. Schools need to be protected. They are vital community assets. The use of sprinklers is proven not only minimise the disruption to a pupil's education, but also the impact on their family and their community. Said the NFCCC has consistently called for sprinklers to be mandated in all new and refurbished school buildings in England. It would provide the same level of protection as schools for the rest of the UK. That is a given. I don't understand. Why would you not make sprinklers mandatory? That seems like an obvious one to me. I mean, I've worked in buildings with sprinklers, and it's there if you need it. That's the whole thing. Like the other school building that said that had their smoke alarms in it. It's like, okay, that's well and good, but it's still your school is still a risk. It's still a risk per se. Um, it's they've said they've updated. Like, I just think they're going to need to put their hands in their pockets. Either this Conservative government or a future Labour government, hands are going to have to be put in their pockets to deal with this. There is absolutely no guarantees that there won't be an incident. Just because just because it's fine now does not mean it's going to be fine later. The safety and concerns of well-being of teachers and pupils who work in those schools needs to be paramount. And the last thing we want to do is pull them out of a school building because of that material as well. It's not fair on the parents as well. Having to have that in the back of their minds that potentially that their children could be working in a school that potentially may have buildings that's not 100% safe. It's just not. It's just very worrying in the back of your mind, and you really don't need it, guys. So what do you guys make of it? More than 900 schools cladding in combustible materials. What do you make of this? What should the government be doing? What can the government do to help? What should a future Labour government do to help? Can it be a case of simply putting their hands in their pockets to change for this? Should sprinklers be mandatory in all schools? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section down below. Hit the like button, be greatly appreciated. Share this across social media and hit that bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I upload another video. Thanks again for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.